UnderHero is a 2018 RPG platformer. You run and jump and climb, and hoodie shoot your way around, but your default method of combat, as you're used to it, is a turn-based system with some degree of what you'd call quick-time events. Enemies do things, you have to time your reactions to them. It is a very solid little unit of game. I find it quite charming and cute, and I really like it. It is also something that I've been looking for a while, which is an opportunity to use a game to explain a concept that I hear used a lot, only by people who hate it. See, I didn't come here to talk to you about UnderHero. I came here to talk to you about postmodernism. Postmodernism is a sort of cultural boogeyman around academia. Doesn't help that actual literal fascists really dislike it, so they will often generate it as part of the long litany of reasons that modern academia is a problem, or the left is off its rocker, or stuff like that, despite having not actually a very good handle on explaining what it is. And this is important. When you become a name in a litany, it often doesn't matter whether or not you belong in that litany, or indeed, if the person giving the litany can provide any meaningful explanation for what you are. You are now part of that group. That group is formed, and you get to deal with being treated as if that group represents all of that group. So, I will often see fully paid, respected journalists complaining about postmodern thought just as readily as I will see, let's be polite and call them gamers, talking about the idea of postmodern game reviews creating problems and ruining the landscape of gaming in some way or another. Similarly, you will sometimes see church leaders complaining about postmodern thinking as destroying the name of God and making it so that everyone is the arbiter of their own truth and stuff like that, as all some sort of insidious attempt to, destroy God, which, by the way, if I could destroy God through the distribution of papers at my university, let me be clear, I would be a crapload more productive. That sounds like an incredibly badass thing to be able to do with a piece of paper and a pen. Myself, my introduction to postmodernism was some years ago, where I met a woman who was at the time attending university, and I was not. She was well-read, she was thoughtful, she was intelligent, she was much smarter than me, and still is. But when she heard the word postmodernism used at a gathering, a thing that we called party, I remember distinctly her whirling around, waving a cigarette, not lit, she was polite, in my direction, and snarling, "F***ing postmodernism." I, a fool, and fresh out of a Christian school, asked, "What's postmodernism?" And to this day, I still don't know what her explanation meant. Because she did not explain postmodernism, but rather explained what things in postmodernism annoyed her. She could not provide to me the outline of the thing I asked for. She could not explain to me what it was she hated, but she could explain her hate. And honestly, there's something interesting in there. There's something really worth hearing too. But it did mean that for the longest time, I had this idea that postmodernism was a failure, a problem, until I came to realize I didn't even understand what it was. And so I went looking. To get a handle on what postmodernism is, you need to have a handle on what modernism is. Modernism is one of those things that feels more familiar than it really is. Because you hear the word modern, and you're like, well, right now, right? This is the modern world. Modern means current, and up to date, and on the cutting edge. And one can make that case, that's definitely a common usage of the word. But when we talk about movements in literature and philosophy and art, modernism refers to, like, the first 30 years of the 20th century. Modernism is a set of movements and outlooks that had the idea of a never-ending upward flow of success. Modernism saw the world before modernism as being left there, bequeathed by God, and through industrial capitalism, modernism was able to transform the world, to upgrade everything. Everything was on this one trajectory towards everything getting better forever now, just because of cars and guns and industrialized machinery. Postmodernism is the response to that, and it's usually penned somewhere between the 50s to the 70s, where suddenly people were looking at modernism with this idea of this never-ending ramp going upwards forever infinitely, and said, yeah, but really though? Is everything better in the modern world? Why do we say it's better? And fundamentally, postmodernism became the movement of examining the things that we assumed to be true in the first place. And there are a bunch of postmodernist scholars, there's a bunch of postmodernist thought, and it's there, and you can look at it, and you can pick it up and use it like a tool set. There are absolutely postmodernist tools in my existing study of games. On the other hand, the model of Roger Caillois, explaining that games are engaged with in this very simple set of strictly limited ways, is pretty modernist. It's the idea that through thinking about one thing hard enough, we can kind of like nail down the fundamental essence of the way the world is. So, when these people rail against postmodernism, they're railing against looking at the stuff we're making. They're railing against reconsidering our assumptions. This dissent against postmodernism is therefore framed as a sort of, look at these postmodernists, they reject the obvious. And the thing is, they typically don't. What they do is they ask, why is the obvious obvious? Why are these assumptions about the way things work? What make us approach these things this way? Have we learned that? Is there something inherent in the thing that makes us think that? And odds are good, if you're a millennial, you have probably never not been soaking in postmodern media. Postmodernism in media is media that reflects on the way that media is distributed. Satire easily strays into habitual postmodernism. Many of our current memes and methods of exchange and interchange are themselves fundamentally postmodern, where it's a meme explains why we are using it the way we are using it. Indeed, meme theory shows a whole way that we communicate that is pretty postmodern, even if the guy who coined it doesn't like postmodernism. And video games. Oh boy, video games are really good at postmodernism. If you've ever played a video game where the buttons move around on you, where the interface gets messed with, where the fact that it's a video game or the fact that saving the game is used in some diegetic way, chances are that game has some postmodern ideas structuring the way that it assumes you will engage with it. And then there are the games that really go to town on that. I could have used Undertale as an explainer for this concept, but the problem is I don't like Undertale, and it seems like getting footage would be really annoying, and you'd mostly watch me be bad at bullet hell games. UnderHero, on the other hand, I find really charming, and now that I've gone, oh, it's a very postmodern game, you're like, oh god, oh no, there's a twist. Oh no, he's spoiled something about this game that I'm watching footage from. Don't worry, I'm not spoiling the grand scheme of things. I'm not telling you how the game ends. But this is a game that starts with the natural assumption of the way a story works, and talks about that you have these characters who are effectively just little XP packets and loot and potions for the hero to take. And then it asks you to explain that, explore that, look at what it does to the world. When the hero is dealt with, who goes and takes the trinkets back for the next time around? What does it mean to be a faceless minion? UnderHero is a really great little game. I'm very fond of it. And one of the things I love about it is that it asks you to understand the enemy rather than just assert that you're sure you know what they already are. It asks you to examine your base assumptions.